Hello and welcome to the Energy Talk podcast where we share stories about energy. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. If you're new here, thank you for joining us, and if you're returning, thank you as well. Today we're talking about artificial intelligence and specifically the effect it's having on not just the job market but also in energy. We're going to be using the oil and gas industry as a major focus, so as a mini case study, and it's going to be an exciting conversation. So I really hope that you enjoy this one, and if you do, please share it with a friend, a colleague, and give us feedback because we would like to hear that. So without any further ado, let's jump right into the conversation for today.
Okay, so my name is Dejo Fabolude. Most people call me Dejo. I am an information management specialist and I lead a team called the Information Management Operations Team in Chevron Nigeria Limited. My work involves supporting the use of various information management or IM tools that are used by the company in the pursuit of our business. Obviously, it's an oil company, so I support the tools we use for managing information, particularly documents that we create, consume, or transform in the course of our business. That includes tools like Microsoft SharePoint. I'm also heavily involved in the support of Office 365 tools that enable increased productivity over what older versions of these tools and other tools may provide. I've been in the industry for nearly 20 years and I worked in various aspects of IT related to infrastructure, that's support of Windows, desktops, and servers, as well as information management, which is my current career track.
So I think an interesting story to tell to the audience is how we met. So I met Mr. Dejo at a conference. It's called the NAFE conference, and it was late last year. And he was giving a talk, or more like a presentation, on this exact topic about AI and other tools that are used in the industry to simplify and to just enhance business operations and other things. And I found it very, very interesting. And I was so grateful that I could have the opportunity to walk up to him and introduce myself and get to have this conversation here today. So I'm really grateful for that.
Yes, I enjoyed meeting you too at that conference. So, what I was actually doing was I was demoing a showcase of various Microsoft tools tied to their AI and back end that show the capabilities that Microsoft has in the artificial intelligence space. So it was a kiosk that demonstrated many of what Microsoft calls their cognitive tools, which demonstrate how AI can be used to capture information primarily from cameras, images, and video that can now be used to present information to users. So it ranged from things like object recognition, where you point your camera at an object, you point it at a cup, and the system recognizes it as a cup and provides you text that says it's a cup. Or you point your camera at people's faces, and the system recognizes if they are smiling or frowning, basically sentiment analysis. So those were the kinds of tools I was demonstrating during that presentation. And Microsoft actually has a kiosk that puts all those tools together that's in the Microsoft store on any Windows 10 computer that shows you at least 20 different uses of these types of tools. Now, obviously, those demos will not be specific to the industry we are discussing, the oil and gas industry, but it does demonstrate the kinds of things you can use those tools for across a variety of use cases. So it shouldn't be very hard for the oil and gas industry to translate those capabilities to what we do. And you'll find out that in many cases, the industry already is doing that type of thing right now.
That's very interesting. So, yeah, when it comes to the energy industry, a lot has been changing in a very short amount of time, especially in oil and gas. There's been lots of need to really adapt and adjust with the way all prices work, just as a very simplified way, and just how many of the extractions for oil and gas is in more complicated areas. So it's no longer conventional resources that are being tapped into. So, in what ways right now are some of these new technologies and AI applications being used in the field?
Okay, so while I can't speak specifically to what my company is doing, I can give you generic examples of the kind of things that are being done. One of the more interesting things that is being done in the industry is using artificial intelligence for pipeline surveillance. So historically, surveillance is done pretty much manually, either with people with boots on the ground doing investigations of what's going on with pipelines, or with flyovers where helicopters fly over sections of pipelines to see what's going on. That translated somewhat to drone flyover. So you're not putting a human being in a helicopter above the pipelines, but you're putting drones flying over them. Now, that's one step forward in technology. But with the more modern technologies, you are now partnering your drone with artificial intelligence. In some cases, edge technologies. Edge technologies is a scenario where the intelligence is not in a data center across the world somewhere, but it's actually on the device, the computing device, in this case, the drone, where some recognition, some analysis can be done. So I think it was, I can't remember what conference it was last year. Microsoft demonstrated a partnership that they had with DJI, the drone makers, that put some of that technology into one of the drones, whereby the drone could be flying over a pipeline, could recognize where there's a leakage or some other kind of activity on a pipeline, and will recognize it and do some analysis right there on the drone without having to send that information back to an operations center first for analysis, but does the analysis and sends the results of the analysis to the operations center. So you see that kind of thing happening. Another thing you are going to begin to see more of is robots replacing human beings in what have been historically hazardous environments. So think underwater operations, tight spaces where the safety risks to human beings are greater than in other places. Robots are now being used for those kinds of operations. So subsea operations, operations where risk of exposure to hydrocarbons or other chemicals is high. Specially designed robots are now replacing human beings in those types of environments, increasing our safety, reducing risk, and in many cases also reducing costs. It's a huge emphasis with many of these tools, their development and their use in the industry, obviously, is to reduce the costs associated with putting people in those places, either because of the risk or because of the cost of putting people there, housing people there, and all the other things associated with human beings doing certain kinds of work. And much of this work are work that human beings have done them historically, not because the work requires the complex thinking that industry professionals can provide, but simply because historically somebody had to be there with eyes and ears to look at these things to make decisions. But now, with the technologies available today, artificial intelligence, robotics, or even the Internet of Things, you can keep human beings far away from those environments. You can automate many things that people used to do and leave the complex decision making activities to human beings, while this rote or risky things are done using computing technology, either with artificial intelligence in the industrial Internet of Things or robotics or combinations of these things.
Hmm. That is very interesting, and this reminds me of a very similar story I read. So, Equinor, which was previously called Statoil, they actually launched this the world's first fully automated oil and gas platform, and it has no housing units, no toilets, and it's basically a self-sufficient platform that is functioning on its own without the need of human um, input. So, I remember from the talk you gave while at the conference, you mentioned a brief definition of what AI was. Is basically you said that you're teaching a machine to make decisions and think like a human being. And with what you said about the innovations coming in and replacing several jobs that don't require like too much intuitive thinking with robots that can kind of do this thing. So how do you feel like the workers in the future, the engineers in the future fit into the system where we have more of the workload being taken off our hands by softwares, by machines, and just by other AI innovations that come into the space?
So, first of all, I'm not an engineer, I'm an IT professional. So, part of my perspective is heavily colored by the fact that I'm an IT person. And I often like to tell people that IT is probably the only profession in the world whereby we spend half of our time trying to put ourselves out of a job because we're either creating technologies like this to do stuff that we ourselves have done historically, or we are training from in the oil and gas industry what we call digital engineers, which is engineers who do what they do as engineers, but also manage and use and create IT tools themselves to do the work, putting the IT professional's job at risk. So that's the kind of industry IT is. We really work hard to put ourselves out of a job. But to your broader point, um, let me use another example to answer that question. So, very many years ago, there was a job called a copy typist, whose job essentially, so it starts from the boss or whoever it is who wants to have a letter written and sent to a customer, to the government, whatever. So, the boss calls the secretary or somebody who knows shorthand into their office. The secretary takes dictation from the boss with shorthand, either translates it to longhand or takes it to the typing pool where a group of people, usually women, who are professional typists and can type 100 words per minute, will either take the shorthand and translate that directly into a typed letter, or if the secretary converted it to longhand first, will take that longhand letter and convert that into a typewritten letter, which is then put into an envelope after being signed by the boss and delivered by post, messenger, whatever, to the recipient. Then the computer was invented, and ultimately, it ended up being a situation where the boss typed his letter himself and sent it by email. In the middle of all of that transformation that sped up the delivery of information from the origin to the destination, we eliminated the role of the copy typist. We eliminated, for the most part, the device called the typewriter, and we mostly eliminated the role of the secretary. Right? So that was the impact of that level of computing technology on the business, on the enterprise. Right? So a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people became unemployed. However, a whole new set of jobs were created. A whole new set of businesses were founded. And many of those people, I would even say most of those people who lost the jobs of copy typists, gained whole new skills that made them more useful to their company or to other companies far beyond what their jobs as copy typists had. And bringing that back home to the industry we've been in, I've seen people who were computer operators in the old definition of the word, people who loaded punch cards into machines, which did the computations, gaining new skills and becoming relatively sophisticated computer professionals using modern technologies. So, while this set of technologies will definitely change the nature of work that is being done by engineers and other professionals in our industry today, and a segment of those people will lose work. Anybody that's willing to learn new skills and can figure out where they can apply themselves and make themselves valuable will have opportunities to excel in the industry or in other industries if they have to leave the energy industry. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yes, that does. And I think it's fair to say that the ability to learn new skills and to continually upgrade yourself as far as workplace operations and just like your own personal thinking about things, that is going to be one of the most highly desirable traits in the future. And I see it's something that you take quite seriously as well, because I believe you just finished up your PhD this year, last year, 2019. Is that correct?
No, I haven't finished. It's still very much a work in progress, and it's not actually a PhD. It's a doctorate in information technology. Difference is that a PhD is an academic doctorate, while what I'm doing is a professional doctorate. So this will not enable me work in academia. This will give me better capabilities to work in industry.
Okay. So let's jump right into one of the biggest challenges that I think the industry, the energy industry, or specifically the oil and gas industry, or every industry basically is dealing with, is the role of climate change and emissions, how that's affecting business models, and how that is influencing decisions in the future. So right now, Chevron stands in a place where it's one of the leading oil companies in the world, and we are in a situation where everyone has kind of reached consensus that okay, we need to reduce our emissions. So just from your own professional standpoint, how do you see the situation, and how do you see this dynamic playing forward into the future?
So most of us are aware of the climate change that's ongoing and how various things have contributed towards it across a very broad spectrum of things. I think one of the first things that many companies in the industry have done or are doing is acknowledging that it's happening and looking at how the business can change to adapt accordingly to contribute towards efforts to reduce the impact of climate change, from changing the way the businesses operate and also changing their focus in terms of what they produce. So, for example, Chevron has an increasing focus, at least in Nigeria, on gas and eliminating flaring. I mean, the federal government had asked all the companies to eliminate flaring by a certain point in time. And beyond eliminating flaring, capturing the gas for commercial use is definitely a major focus. And natural gas is a cleaner form of energy than other forms of fossil fuels. So there's a strong emphasis on that. In terms of mindshare, you read the press, you see what's going on just as well as I do. The energy companies are being treated in most cases as the big villains behind what's happening. And we all know that it's far, far more complicated than that. I mean, even cows are being blamed. That the single largest source of carbon monoxide release into the atmosphere is livestock. Either the largest or one of the two, three largest is livestock. So there's a huge push by some activists to try and drive people towards being vegetarian rather than meat consumers. I wish them all the luck with that. But there is a lot of complexity to how we got to where we are, and it's going to take effort from everyone to make the necessary changes.
That is actually a perfect answer to the question because just to give some of the audience, I know it's been in the news a lot. Recently, last year, ExxonMobil got sued because apparently, according to some activists, they were responsible for fueling climate denial, as it was put. Exxon won that lawsuit, but that's just besides the point. And I think we've reached a stage in the conversation where people are looking for who's to blame. And for years, the fossil fuel industry has always been in a very very curious place when it comes to public perception. And now it's the time where people are really pushing for that, especially people who are being loud in the climate activism space, and they're really taking advantage of this to push for other forms of energy, which we do need other forms of energy, but as you rightfully said, it's a complex situation that does require complex thinking and complex solutions to come out of it. But in all of this, has the industry continues to evolve, and as we move away from, I think there's a general consensus now that coal is the first thing to actually that needs to get phased out. That might be slower in countries like Nigeria, and like or Nigeria doesn't really rely too much on coal, but developing countries that still see coal as a good alternative to generating cheap electricity. So as we go more into the future, we are going to see our energy systems becoming more and more complicated. The idea of having a national grid that provides electricity to all the people in the country is becoming more and more an outdated concept in many ways where you look at it. So in the future, how big do you think a role technology is going to play in really aiding the push to see that, okay, where is the best place for us to really put our efforts and to just make the decision making process as quick and as effective as possible?
So, one of the things I often have to remind myself about as a computer scientist is that the word technology does not always mean just computer technology. So, I mean, that's the natural thing for me and my peers to think about. To That's how we naturally think when we think of technology. We immediately think of computers, tablets, servers, the cloud, all those types of things that have chips, bits, and bytes in them. But that's not all that technology is. So, talk about energy, for example, transmission of electricity, storage of electricity, generation of, and all of that. Um, Petroleum pipelines, gas pipelines, all of those things are technologies. And for a nation like Nigeria that is evolving, that has never been in a place where we've had continuous constant electricity to the home without break. All of these technologies need to be improved upon in order to get us to where we want to get to. But it's not just technologies that help deliver these things, but even technologies that help with maintenance, with transportation. Um, who knows how much efficiency we lose in the delivery supply chain for petrol or diesel or kerosene because we're heavily reliant on trucks moving up and down the road. Why can't we have pipelines to every major metropolis or every major industrial hub that carries gas straight to where those things are needed? Or as we begin to consider renewable sources of energy, solar, wind, why don't we have a major wind farm or a major solar farm in Nigeria yet? Or considering that we are a country that has been made up of every man being his own nation in terms of providing his own water to his own house through boreholes, his own electricity through generators, his own security through fences and gate men. Some of these things that we've always done in Nigeria are things that suddenly being considered, whereby people have solar panels on their homes and are returning electricity, generating enough electricity for their use and providing electricity to the national grid. Considering that Nigeria already is in that place where people create their own worlds, as it were, it would be a lot easier than in other places for us to get to the point where people have their own power generation systems from renewable sources, in this case, solar panels, and are selling power to the distributors by that mechanism to distribute elsewhere, either to the industrial areas or to people who, for whatever reason, can't maintain their own solar systems in their homes. So those kinds of technological transformations, but also mental transformations are needed to get us to where we want to be in terms of energy for life in Nigeria. But those are not my areas of expertise. Those are just thoughts I have from observing really what's going on.
Hmm. Okay. So there's actually a conversation I was having with a friend a few weeks ago that I would like your professional or your personal opinion regarding. So it has to do with the concept of the energy mix, which is just the sources of energy that a country relies on to meet the needs of the people, and the need for diversification in that area. Like lots of the developed countries have a very good portfolio of energy sources. They have things like natural gas, coal. They have wind, solar. They have nuclear, and they have a healthy base of basically people can choose from the utilities where they want their electricity to come from in some places. And in many developing countries, you've reached this place where there's really just one that gets focused on, and more as the renewable narratives gets pushed on, that seems to be the more popular option. And it comes into the conversation when we start thinking about the role that some of the oil majors play in the energy industry. A few of them also have seen the trend and have started to diversify as well and buy up assets in renewable energy or biofuels. And in the future, do you think we can have a reality where we can have a company like Chevron becoming one of the largest producers of renewable energy or clean energy, and moving away from oil and gas as we continue to develop and as different needs continue to arise? Because many of the of oil majors are beginning to rebrand themselves as not oil and gas companies but as energy companies. So, from a broader perspective, do you see that as something that could happen in the future? And if you could just give your personal take on that.
Yeah, so Chevron does call itself an energy company. And let's put in perspective, Chevron is over 100 years old. To have survived that long and become a multinational in that period and remain a multinational in that period, there have been a lot of deep thinkers, far forward thinking leaders and professionals in the company over the last decades. And we would not have survived this long and continue to survive if we are not ready to make whatever changes are needed. And that includes investing in other forms of energy. I mean, over the decades, even within hydrocarbons, we've done all sorts of things from, I mean, oil, gas, different types of oil, light oil, heavy oil, tar sands, shale. Those have involved transformational thinking, transformational decision making. And I absolutely am convinced that we will continue to do so in order to survive and to serve the communities that we do serve across the world. I know we have some investments in biofuels. I know that we invested in a wind farm in Kazakhstan. So Chevron is not closed minded. Chevron is, as you will see if you check our public website, chevron.com. Chevron is involved in all sorts of things to better provide energy to the world.
So I don't know if you've watched a bunch of some of the climate activists speak about fossil fuel companies. Anytime somebody says a statement like that, they the first thing they retort is to call it greenwashing, to just say that okay, they're just saying things that sound good for the press, but that's really not what's going on in actuality. And more that rhetoric is starting to get a lot more popular, and it goes back to what you said about just thinking about the challenges of energy in a complex manner, and not being tempted or not being lured into just have a very simplistic good guy bad guy mentality. And just I'm just like people are going to be very confused in the future when they see like a company like Shell, Chevron stick around and truly embrace the identity of being energy companies. And that might be inevitable in the future, but that's just watching that transition occur is going to be very interesting.
Yes, it will be interesting to watch it. But like I like to emphasize, I am in technology, I'm in IT. And despite what I said earlier about IT being the only profession where we work hard to put ourselves out of a job, it's also true that it's one of those professions that can work in pretty much any environment. So put me in an oil company, put me in a legal firm, put me in industry, I can contribute. So however the industry transforms or the energy conversation around the world changes, um, there is something I can contribute as an IT professional towards that. And it is a complex conversation when you talk about energy. So you have the climate change conversation being strongly driven by activists, mainly in the West. Though, of course, you also have people who are seeing the impact of climate change in Nigeria and other developing environments and are raising their voices for their communities. But often, what is also being seen is that one part of the world has experienced the benefits of energy exploration, then just when the rest of us are trying to raise ourselves to the place where we can experience similar benefits, we're now being told this energy, which is easiest, this energy source, which is easiest for you to get, is really bad for everyone. Please stop. So
Hmm.
it's kind of like saying, you know what, we've had our fun. Now that it's your turn, you can't have any more fun. It's a complex conversation. And
Yes, it
there
is.
are no easy answers. And for those who want to push easy answers, they will actually just contribute more to the problem than to solutions. Ultimately, everyone across the planet is going to have to be involved in one form or the other to help battle the impact of climate change and help push back the the hand of the changes that are happening even as we speak.
That's a very interesting point you mentioned about most of the climate activists coming from the West, and the message they preach sometimes it doesn't reflect very much when you're living in a place like developing countries like Nigeria, like Uganda, like India, like Peru in South America, and other countries that have not enjoyed the benefit that the West enjoy right now. And using Nigeria as a case study for this, we can see that even though people are feeling the effects of climate change in the country, it's still not the first problem that comes to people's mind. People still have to worry about what they're going to feed their families that day, if they can make enough money, and other small problems that can be fixed with the development that comes with fossil fuels and other dirty forms of energy as they've been framed in the last few years. So it really having that conversation and having both sides kind of understand that the complexities involved just can't be waved away by anybody's convenience. But moving away from that now, being in the position you're in, it gives you a unique privilege to kind of look towards the future of how businesses and operations are going to be run, and really get a good understanding of where technology is moving towards and how to better equip yourself for those technologies and for those new roles that are going to be opening up due to those technologies. And for young people who are like looking to get into the industry and to start solving problems, or people who already started their careers and just looking to ways to improve themselves, what would you say is a good place to really start learning and focusing and just preparing yourself for a future that is complex, fast moving, and full of technological wonders?
All right, so still kind of staying a bit with the theme of climate change and the energy industry and all of that. So part of what's going on right now is the mass migration to cloud-based technologies. So a few years ago, a typical growing company in a place like Nigeria that is depending more and more on technologies, on servers, applications, and all of that for its business would set up a data center, right? A data center will have a bunch of servers, and if it's anything non trivial, you have to think about constant power supply. You have to think of cooling systems. You have to think of all of those things, which require infrastructure investment, require lots of energy, and all of that. But now, with the race to the cloud, you can get essentially the same amount of technology at your fingerprints without spending any of that by using cloud services, right? So you put your servers in Microsoft's Azure cloud or in Amazon's Amazon Web Services cloud, and you consume the services you want via those mechanisms. Here's the problem: the skill sets that would have been required to support the data center in Nigeria, which would have required the training of Nigerians to be the technical professionals, whether in computing, whether in facilities management, whether in electricity management, and all of that, suddenly goes away. And instead, all that money is being spent on Microsoft or Amazon's or Google's cloud, where the professionals, there are only a few of them, relatively speaking, compared to what what you have needed to have before in Nigeria, and these professionals are on the other side of the planet. So all of a sudden, the capabilities that were once so valuable are no longer valuable, even though they are really technical capabilities, because the need for them within this environment is not there anymore as people move to the cloud and don't invest in this infrastructure. So, what does the young Nigerian professional Need to do? In addition to all of that, there's also the fact that, all right, so maybe what they need to do is build the necessary skill sets to be able to work with those technologies in the cloud wherever they are, and serve as consulting or developers or other kinds of professionals in Nigeria. But part of the complexity now is that where once upon a time your competition was the guy in the next room in Unilag or in Ife or whatever, your competition now is the guy in MIT, because you're providing the same services. You are part of the same global pool of talent that's needed to do the work. So all of a sudden, your competitive pool has expanded. The local demand for your skill set is more complex because they're no longer dependent on you because you're in Nigeria. Anybody now can call upon technology skills from people in Kazakhstan, in Russia, in the United Emirates, in the UK. So, coming back to the question, what does a Nigerian professional need to do? So, first of all, moving away from IT, whatever profession you're getting into, law, um, engineering, medicine, you absolutely need to invest in learning technological skills. One of the buzzwords right now is big data, or buzz phrase is big data and analytics. Anybody in any profession that you may be in, business, human resources, legal, anything, you need to understand the fundamentals of big data and analytics. Forget the big data part. You need to understand the fundamentals of analytics. Whether you have large sets of data or you have small amounts of data, you need to be able to analyze that data and use it to improve your decision making in whatever profession you are in. And in addition, I would urge anybody, I don't care what you're doing as a student, be it English, be it French, be it political science, be it any of those things, learn to program. Pick up a programming language of some sort or a programming tool. There's what's called low code, no code programming technologies, whereby you can create applications with little to no programming knowledge. Everyone needs to be able to program or create applications, whatever profession you are in. If you're a farmer, learn to analyze data and apply it to your farming. Coming back to the IT field itself, right now, yes, the big things are big data analytics, artificial intelligence, robotics. So anybody that's getting into those areas needs to build up some skills in those areas and pick one or two of them to develop mastery in. Um, Big data analytics is possibly the simplest in terms of the tool sets you will need to learn in order to become immediately useful. And it's in high demand right now, but it's also rapidly transforming because many organizations are trying to build what they call the citizen data scientists, which are people in other professions other than IT who can do data science on their job. So if you're an HR professional, you need to learn how to analyze human resources information in order to be a better HR organization. So while data scientists, professional data scientists are in high demand, they need to have skills that citizen data scientists will not have in order to stay relevant or be relevant in the organizations. Robotics is interesting because by virtue of being robotics, it's not just software, it's hardware. So that is harder to get into, but it's also a huge amount of opportunities in there. So when we think of robotics outside of science fiction, we tend to think in terms of factories. So we see car factories, Toyota with assembly lines of robots, or we think of warehouses like what Amazon has, where you have an increasing number of jobs being done by robots. But there are huge areas where robots can be adopted as they become more capable over time, from law enforcement to vehicle and road maintenance to transportation to construction, all sorts of areas. Of course, the big concern with those things is they will increasingly replace human beings who do that and what then happens to people. But still, those are some of the areas where there is growth in the future. And of course, there is artificial intelligence and cloud related services. So, right now, 2020, those are areas of focus that young adults or people coming into the workforce newly need to explore to build up skills, whatever professions they are getting into.
Hmm. Okay, so just as a closing question, I would really like to know about this. What are you most excited about when it comes to the future, and what do you have the most concern about? I know regularly when AI comes up as a conversation, especially Elon Musk has been talking about the ethics behind AI and how they kind of learn the biases of the people who are programming them. So, in the future, what are you most excited about when it comes to technology, and what are you most concerned about?
So, what I'm most excited about with technology hasn't changed in the sense that when you think about it, I'm of a generation that his first television set at home was a black and white television. okay, which had NTV, Nigerian television, on from 4 p.m. till I think like 10 p.m. at night. Now I have a phone that can do everything from complex computations, complex communications to watching instant television from virtually anywhere in the world. I have in that same device the ability to predict travel patterns and estimate when I will get to my destination when I leave home, or better still, see that there's huge traffic and decide not to go at all and instead confer with somebody remotely. So we moved across decades of technological transformation that has provided capabilities that did not exist 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And that's going to continue, and that still continues to excite me. The things we can do as we adopt more and more technology. That at the same time is also what scares me because what the very same things that can be used for good are the same things that can be used for evil. Once upon a time, you needed huge amounts of money to do certain things, and therefore it was only nation states that did them. Once upon a time, you needed to be nation states to wage war. Once upon a time, you needed to be a nation state to put a satellite into space, to put a man into space. Now, private corporations are doing those things. And that has made them more accessible to everyone for good and for ill. So while drones are being used to deliver vaccines to remote villages in Rwanda, drones are being used to deliver bombs. Computers, phones are being used to enable people across the planet communicate and conduct commerce across the planet. These same devices are being used to destroy people's lives, either through ransomware, through internet trolls on social media, and a variety of means. So the rapid transformation technology enables, the speed of engagement technology enables is astonishingly wonderful and at the same time extremely frightening. So the same things I'm excited about are the same things I am afraid for because things have become so easy and so cheap that things we could not accomplish for good a decade ago we can do. And the evil that is in the heart of men is also very easy to accomplish in this day and age.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation. That was a very interesting way to end off. I thought that was perfect. AI is going to drastically change the way we do business, and it's going to be very exciting to not just prepare for that future, but also get excited for it because one thing you have to realize about challenges is there are also opportunities for us to improve, learn new skills, and I think most of the people that listen to this podcast are pretty young. I think we have a decent idea of what the demographics are. But regardless of where you are in your career, there's always space to get better and to learn new skills. And I think this is the perfect time because capacity to learn, as they just said, will be very important in the future of whatever you're doing, not just in energy. So I hope you really enjoyed this conversation. It was a really great conversation to be part of. And honestly, I've taken so many of the tips that they just shared in my own personal life and just setting up a personal development calendar, if you will, for the year. So thank you so much. And next episode, we are talking about something that I find very, very interesting. It's a young lady who has been in the news quite a bit in the last few weeks now. So I won't spoil it too much, but let's just say she's a climate activist from Uganda, and she made headlines when she had a visit to Davos last year. Or was it this year? If that's hint enough for you, then you know who I'm talking about. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, then join us next week as we have another energy talk. This episode was produced by yours truly. Thank you so much, Jensen, for the music, and I'll see you all next week. Have a lovely day.